Hello there, good evening. I wanted to bring to your notice a open letter that is being hosted by the website Science on Trial, and I'll read it through and I'll give you the link in the description bar and also in a pinned comment below this video. And there's a section at the top which explains. It says, if you are a nurse, medical professional or healthcare professional, join us in making a stand to ensure that the scientific evidence used to convict Lucy Letby is subject to an independent review. As individuals, our voices may be small, but together we have the power to create change. Sign our open letter by completing the form below to urge Prime Minister Keir Starmer to initiate a full independent review of the evidence used in the trials of Lucy Letby. There's a disclaimer here which says the letter is hosted on the Science on Trial website but is not an official publication of Science on Trial. This letter is being hosted on behalf of nurses and medical/healthcare professionals who authored and support its content. Science on Trial is providing this platform to amplify their voices, but does not claim ownership or responsibility for the letter's content. So a number of nurses have already signed this, 19 in fact, and this is an invitation for more nurses, healthcare, medical professionals, whether retired or actively working currently. So I'll read the actual letter. Before I do that, apparently there's going to be some newspaper reports coming out about this letter and showing the link for it, but I thought I'd do it today in advance of that reporting because this letter has already been made known on Twitter and links have been provided already. So I thought if the point is obviously to reach as many people who would like to sign this letter as possible, I thought I'd do it as soon as possible. So the title is Open Letter Regarding the Conviction of Lucy Letby. Subheading, Request for Full Forensic Review of the Evidence Used in the Lucy Letby Case. Dear Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, as a collective of registered and retired nurses, medical professionals and healthcare professionals, we write this open letter to Prime Minister Keir Starmer to communicate our growing concerns regarding the evidence presented and used to convict Ms. Lucy Letby. Over the last months and weeks, our concerns surrounding the trials of Lucy Letby have been echoed by medical experts, eminent statisticians, scientists, respected investigative journalists, other healthcare professionals and the public. Many of us have carefully studied the evidence presented in court, with some of us attending the court hearings in person, but all of us are worried that this conviction is unsafe. And as a result, we and many of our colleagues are now terrified to continue working in the NHS, as we believe that next time it could be one of us who is blamed for a failing system. We believe that flawed and unreliable scientific evidence was used to convict Ms. Letby. And this is having a huge impact on the nursing profession. As reported recently in the Telegraph, nurses have been warned by trusts not to speak about the case or they may lose their jobs. This fear, as well as the potential for being demonised, trolled and being labelled conspiracy theorists, means that our voices are not being heard. I'll just take a sip of this drink. Continue with reading the letter. This is the open letter. We are all unified in offering our condolences to the families who have suffered tremendous loss or harm to their babies in this case. We want truth for all families involved, and we believe that there are some families who have concerns about suboptimal care in the maternity/neonatal unit, not just at the Countess of Chester, but in units across the UK. Today, like every day, we take our duty of candour seriously. Duty of candour, that's sort of capital D, capital C, so it's obviously a regulation or a moral duty and an official duty. Our duty of candour seriously, and have taken this more protected route to speak out and urge the government to order a royal commission / independent review of the medical evidence used to convict Miss Letby. And then there's a list of key areas of concern. Our key areas of concern. Number 1, the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health Report 2016, carried out by the Trust after the spike in deaths, was never explored or shown to the jury. It clearly outlined higher activity with higher risk babies, staffing shortages, insufficient consultant presence and ward rounds, and a reluctance by medical staff to seek senior support. A reluctance by medical staff to seek senior support. Point 2. The staffing chart presented to the jury was misleading and offered a very selective picture of presence on shift for deaths and collapses, with 6 or more deaths in the indictment period which were left off the chart and which have been revealed through a Freedom of Information request. When the prosecution's casee repeatedly told the jury that there were 7 deaths and Lucy Letby was, quote, there for all of them, this was extremely misleading. Key area number 3. Clear evidence of suboptimal care on the unit needs to be acknowledged and investigated, as many believe that it may have been an important factor in several of the deaths and collapses. Key point 4. Protocols for blood sampling for the insulin cases were clearly not followed, rendering the tests invalid. Other medical explanations were never properly explored. The laboratory itself states any test for exogenous insulin, that's synthetic insulin, requires the blood to undergo a second test at a more specialist laboratory in Guildford. This was never done. No forensic testing was ever carried out, and therefore unreliable results, which should never have been admissible, were shown to the jury. Key point 5. During the trial, experts repeatedly misrepresented the health state of the babies, of the state of health, repeatedly describing them as, quote, well and, quote, stable, when many of them were extremely premature and vulnerable. Most of the babies required respiratory support and ventilation and other medical interventions. Some were being treated for infections. The risk of their conditions was minimised by the Chester consultants, the expert witnesses for the prosecution, and the prosecution counsel. Key point 6. Eminent neonatologist Dr. Shu Lee gave very clear and impressive evidence in the appeal hearing in May 2024, in which he clearly rebutted the air emboli hypothesis that had been presented by the prosecution's expert witnesses. The appeal court judges refused to accept this evidence, claiming that it should have been used in the main trial. The truth is the truth and will always remain the truth. What has been heard cannot be unheard. High scientific standards were not met by the prosecution witnesses, and their evidence was not built on credible scientific facts. Key point 7. In the retrial in June 2024, it became clear that the swipe entry data, which built a timeline of opportunity, was in fact incorrect. The jury in the first trial was unaware of this information when deliberating the verdicts. Also, medical notes had been incorrectly placed in the wrong date order, which also became clear in the retrial. Medical notes in the wrong date order. Point 8. This is the penultimate one. There was no direct evidence to link Miss Letby to causing any physical harm. The case was built on a weak foundation of circumstantial and ambiguous evidence. Final key point, number 9. Expert witnesses in this case gave unscientific testimonies, offering what we know as nurses to be extremely implausible. Other causes of death / collapse were not properly explored by the police or the prosecution, who set out to prove that Lucy Letby must have caused the harm and deaths. No methodology or detail was given at any stage as to how they reached their conclusions, or why other potential causes such as substandard care, hygiene issues, and natural course of illness had been ruled out. Absolutely. And it goes on to say, since reporting restrictions have been lifted, multiple media outlets have published detailed articles presenting serious concerns with the reliability of the evidence used to convict Miss Letby. With respect, we request a scientifically rigorous Royal Commission / independent review where real experts, such as forensic pathologists, medical specialists and scientists, can conduct a detailed and meticulous forensic assessment to re-examine the evidence in this troubling case. We believe this is crucial for nurses and healthcare practitioners alike, so that we can feel confident and safe in our work. We also encourage the formation of a specialised cross-party task force dedicated to investigating the procedural irregularities that have been exposed by the media. We are unified as a country in our belief in a fair and open justice system. The trial of Ms. Letby has undermined our collective faith, and we urge you to act now to restore the public confidence in the justice system. For now, many nurses and healthcare professionals do not have that confidence. Yours sincerely, 19 concerned nurses. So this is an invitation. There's a form below in which you'll see when you click on the link, where you can put your name and email, and it's obviously all confidential, and then it gets added to this this letter that will hopefully be seen by Keir Starmer or somebody in the government, somebody perhaps the Home Secretary, or hopefully Keir Starmer, or whomsoever, somebody who can actually take action and make this happen. In short, that's just my saucepan falling down in the kitchen. Anyway, this is a very good letter, I think. I know you can't have everything in it. It just struck me there's a few things there that, in terms of the door swipe data, there's this period between, I think it's between, from memory now, it's May to October 2015, of missing data. So it's not just incorrect data, there's a big chunk of missing data that wasn't supplied. Whether the hospital have it and they just didn't supply it, I don't know. Also found out today, or it might have been yesterday, I think it was today, that the defence team knew in March about the incorrect door swipe data in March. 6 weeks, I think from memory, 6 weeks or so before, 6 weeks before they brought the second attempt to get leave to appeal for Lucy Letby. And yet in the Court of Appeal answer, there's nothing mentioned in that, so it obviously wasn't brought up in the grounds. We can only conclude it wasn't brought up as one of the grounds of appeal. But they knew it in March. That's what we hear. That's what we hear now. So it was known to the defence that that data is incorrect, and by extension, it's an unknown quantity at the moment how much of that incorrect data was or was not an influence in terms of all the other indictments, all the other convictions that happened in the 2023 trial. That's an unknown thing. CPS have been very sort of cagey about it and just done this wash of saying, oh, we feel sure that it wouldn't have made a difference, that it was, but that's got to be shown and proved, doesn't it, really? And that's what David Davis has asked specifically, one of the high-up executives of the Chester part of the CPS, to provide an absolute assurance that that is the case. I think, as I mentioned yesterday in the video, you need to double check it. I wouldn't take their word for anything, for CPS obviously, or the police. So you'd have to be checked. And as I was saying before, to get the data of all 5 doors, irrespective of whether they use the data in the case or not, because there could be exculpatory data in relation to the other doors potentially that just simply wasn't looked at by either prosecution or defence, But it could be there. I think part of the duty of the defence should have been to look at all that data, and why they just simply accepted that there's a big chunk of data missing for about that covers about seven of the charges and 4 of the eventual convictions, 4 of them, and they just sort of let that go. I don't know. And the fact that the defence know in March of this year, prior to bringing the second application for leave to appeal, they know that DOR data was wrong, and yet it wasn't brought up as, presumably it wasn't brought up as one of the grounds to the Court of Appeal, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't, otherwise it would have been reported on, because people listened into that. They went and watched that application for leave to appeal, which was turned down. Moreover, in the Court of Appeal's answer, it doesn't come up, so obviously it wasn't mentioned. Why was it not mentioned? That's quite a compelling question, I think, and needs to be answered, as well as many other strong questions. There was a few other points I wanted to mention about this. Not criticising it. I'm just saying, just as it's a letter covering quite a lot of the areas. They do mention something about hygiene issues, but really it's been acknowledged now that there was this actual cases of Pseudomonas aeruginosa, bit tricky to say that, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, found on the taps on more than one occasion, certainly around the December period as well. And then you've got, as I've mentioned in other videos, you've got January with a spike of 3 deaths, January 2016. The next month, none of those deaths are applicable to Lucy Letby. None of them were part of the indictment, is what I mean. So you've got that spike coming after that finding of the Pseudomonas aeruginosa in December 2015. Next month, you've got a spike of 3 deaths. And I think it would have been good to mention that perhaps in here, but maybe that's what, in a sense, I understand they can't put everything in there, it become too unwieldy. And that's what the proper investigation would obviously need to take into account. You know, what do they call it? You know, they need to, a full independent review. You know, full independent review would need to take that into account. And the fact that there was a protocol in the unit at that time, and pretty much throughout this whole period, protocol, an actual written protocol in the hospital of treating all the babies as though they were infected, so that they would, you know, potentially at risk of sepsis at any time. And obviously many of them, as Dr. McLachlan's work, for example, going right back to last July and August, was showing it, the baby by baby who was doing it on his Substacks, the Law Health Tech Substacks, well over a year ago. And he was doing that and mentioning Pseudomonas aeruginosa in those. So it's been known for quite a long time, but now it's explicitly confirmed, and confirmed to the extent that there was this protocol in the unit itself. There was a couple of other things I wanted to mention. I mean, it's just this idea about the methodology. They're talking about the methodology, which is absolutely right. Any Royal Commission / independent review needs to look at the methodology, and I keep banging on about this, not only of the cases that were deemed by this individual, Evans, as unexplained and unexpected, and they end up as part of the indictment list sheet, the rap sheet, the eventual convictions, but his methodology for deciding the cases, all the other deaths, which are the preponderance of deaths over that period of time, his methodology for deciding which were explainable and expected. That's just as important to look at and analyse in order to really, what I believe should happen is his methodology will just crumble, you know, like something made of sand, you know, or just fall to pieces, as it has done already, actually. And, you know, under the gaze, the medical gaze of people like Dr. McLachlan and Dr. McConville and others, in fact, and obviously Dr. Sviliana Dimitrova, you know, saying that she's saying, what did she say in the Channel 5 video? She said, putting it politely, there's just totally implausible what this guy's saying, you know, totally implausible, putting it politely. Another thing that springs to mind about this, I think it's an excellent letter, and I really hope anyone who fits into those categories, so either still working now or retired, who a nurse, medical professional of different kinds, what does it say here? Registered and retired nurses, medical professionals, healthcare professionals. So it's, you know, potentially a huge pool of people that definitely are concerned and would be concerned, as they say here, that, you know, they could be next. And in that video, the last night, I think it was, about the Telegraph article, where you've got the that nurse practitioner that was made redundant from Countess of Chester Hospital, saying at the end, very powerfully, very convincingly, you know, she thought, there but for the grace of God go I, and other people will be feeling that. And I can't remember the source off the top of my head now, but I remember there was a neonatal unit somewhere in the country in which there's quite a few neonatal nurses suddenly just decided to leave on the basis of what's happening here and what's happened to Lucy Letby, because they could be next. Because they know that they got a sense that they haven't got the support, they haven't got the units aren't working effectively, the medical support isn't there, you know, there's going to be issues in other units, and people are recognising, God, if there's a spike in deaths here, I'm the next Lucy Letby, I'm the next person to have a finger pointed at me. And you can't blame them. So this is why this has got to happen. I think this is a very powerful way to get this out in the open, to actually insist that it's looked into, all the evidence is looked into here, because then people aren't buying it, they're not buying it. And the reason they haven't come out more and explicitly, is very understandably, is that the NHS would go after them, basically, and as they've been warned off. There's a kind of a I was going to say some kind of omerta, like an agreement of silence, but it's not that. It's sort of top down, isn't it? It's the idea that they'd lose their jobs, their careers would be probably over, they'd be constructively dismissed, whatever, you know, chased out, not find employment again, you know, maybe lose their pensions, all sorts of stuff. Because it's kind of par for the course of what happens when you go up against these trusts. You know, we've seen it, whether it's somebody who's an anaesthetist or even a chief executive that's happened to, you know, you get blacklisted. And obviously individual nurses and doctors do too when they're whistleblowers, or they rock the boat. And as we know, you know, nurses from the Countess of Chester Hospital wanted to speak on behalf of Lucy Letby as characters, witnesses, and support her, and they were warned off this. You know, you're going to lose your job. You'll lose your job if you speak for her, which I think really amounts to perverting the course of justice in terms of that kind of coercion and that threat. I believe that. You know, is the case that Lucy didn't get any professional character witnesses because the NHS warned them all off, threatened them basically in so many words. So, well, you can do it, we can't stop you, but it's going to ruin your career or whatever. Coercion, threat. Isn't that perverting the course of justice? When it's very important to have character witnesses when you're on trial for something like this. Anyway, there's one final point just springs to mind in terms of what aspect was it here. It's talking about this period in time. Yeah, I can't see it at the moment, but there's one of these sections here where it's talking about. I'm just going to pause the video. I'm going to find it. I need to find it. I've just found it. It's point 2. I'll just read it again, actually. The staffing chart, this chart with all the X's down it. The staffing chart presented to the jury was misleading. Yeah, that's an understatement. It was fraudulent, really, you know, and offered a very fraudulent in terms of what it was terms of justice and truth and statistics, really, because, anyway, it was misleading and offered a very selective picture of presence on shift for deaths and collapses, with 6 or more deaths in the indictment period, which were left off the chart. Now, it's that phrase, indictment period. And again, I'm not picking holes in this. It's just, when I read things like this, I just want to bring these other arguments to bear that I've mentioned many times before. The indictment period itself, from June to June, is completely and utterly arbitrary. It's been selected by whom? Who selected it? Well, initially the consultants, and then Evans, and then the police, or in some kind of, melange, in some kind of order like that, or it's consultants, then police, then Evans. It's all 3 components are deciding on this arbitrary period of time. Why would you do that when there are deaths before June 2015 and there's a death after June 2016? Completely arbitrary. I'll just finish off reading that point 2 again. Key point 2, saying with 6 or more deaths in the indictment period. The fact they're saying or more because nobody's really sure how many deaths occurred in this period because of these issues with the Freedom of Information request. I'm still waiting to hear. They're taking ages to get back to me to tell me why. Well, I didn't actually ask them very explicitly. I'm talking about these deaths that happened in August and October 2015, for which there are no early neonatal deaths showing, but there are stillbirths showing. I wanted an explicit assurance from them, or an acknowledgement that the sad death of any baby is recorded for the month that it passes on, for that month. If that is the case, that's the assurance that I need from the Freedom of Information request. Because some people have mentioned something that I found quite unusual. There's an idea, really, that somehow they would code it in the month of birth, even though the month of death is a different month, and that seems to be very strange to me. So I wanted the confirmation from them that that is not the case, and so then we definitely know then that there are more than 17 deaths in those 2 years. You've got 19 then. And those 2 early neonatal deaths of August and October 2015 have either been missed off completely, the Freedom of Information request, for what reason we do not know, or they've been miscoded deliberately or accidentally in quotes, or deliberately as stillbirths. And if that is the case, how many other of the stillbirths across those 2 years and other years were actually early neonatal deaths? That's a further question to answer. And it goes back to this idea that this selected indictment period, and that there were 6 more deaths. Well, why not look at the full 2 years? And really, there has to be 19 deaths in those 2 years. There has to be. Whether they've missed them off completely, rather than miscoding them as stillbirths for the August and October deaths that ended up being murder charges, or that they've miscoded them deliberately or accidentally on purpose as stillbirths. That's still 2 deaths to add to the full total for 2015 and 2016. So that's 19 deaths. So Lucy Letby is charged and was convicted of 7 murders. So the large preponderance of deaths there, Lucy Letby was never connected to, as it were, and never formed part of any indictment or any charge sheet like that. So 12 at a minimum. 12 at a minimum. So 12 of the 19, and 7 ended up on this charge sheet. So I think that's it. I think that's what I want to say about it. I think it's a very good letter, and I really hope as many people get to see it. And if anyone listens to this video who is a medical professional, healthcare professional, nurse, either retired or currently working or retired, then I hope as many people sign this letter as possible. And as I say, I'll put the link to this open letter to Keir Starmer in the description bar, and also, just to make sure, in a pinned comment below Thank you very much for listening, and all the best. Take care. Bye-bye.